Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, welcome to a new video. In today's video, we will be talking about the latest album from Lana Del Rey titled Norman Floppy Rockwell. This is the fifth major label release from Lizzy Grant, aka Lana Del Rey, and her sixth album total. This is coming off of the heels of one of her least acclaimed album so far, that is Lust for Life. Quite frankly, actually, I never really got into Lana Del Rey as an artist. I found a lot of her songs to be very bland, very boring, very tedious and monotonous. I think the only song that I actually care about from her is Summertime Sadness, and that is prior to listening to this album. Going back into the back catalog of Lana Del Rey, you realize that there's a lot of monotony and a lot of arduous listening, a lot of painful listening, at least from my experience. I've never been a fan of Lana Del Rey's style of music. I've always thought it was very drawn out, very boring. But nevertheless, what we get on Norman Rockwell, NFR, if I call it that, is a different approach to what she's been doing this entire time. This is a more soft psych rock side of her that also includes a plethora of piano ballads. And quite frankly, I can say definitively that this is Lana Del Rey's best album to date, with some of her most poignant and most mature songwriting to date as well. Extremely well thought out and very articulated she has become on this album. Not saying that she hasn't been articulate, but she just sometimes doesn't have a way with words. And there are a couple times on NFR that also is the case. Sometimes a little lyric can be corny here or there, but most of what's on this album is very well thought out, very well performed, and very much performed in such a way I've never heard Lana perform before. Her vocals sound more clearer. They don't sound drony or like hazy or lame. Rather, they sound more emotional. She does have a lot more emotion in her vocals on this album than any album prior to NFR. Another side to this album, not only the vocals, but the production on this, which is handled by Lana, as well as Jack Antonoff of Fun fame and Bleachers fame. Those two are the majority of songwriters and producers on this album. Also, there's a Sublime cover, and there's another person that works with like one song off of this album. So overall, Jack Antonoff, Lana Del Rey, they have worked meticulously on this album, and throughout all of the songs, they sound pretty alike. Granted, they sound very nice, and unfortunately, to kind of Lana Del Rey's disadvantage, this album acts as a one-trick pony, in that it gives you the same thing, just like
repurposed.
But here's the thing, I like the sound that is on this album. I like the style of soft rock and piano ballads that are on this album. That's just how I am. Personally, I find this album to be very appealing to me. We start the album off with the title track, and in all honesty, this is up there with a lot of great beginning tracks, a lot of great introduction tracks to an album. Fantastically orchestrated, fantastically sung, and the next song, Mariner's Apartment Complex, is equally as beautiful and spectacular. The 9-minute track, Venice Bitch, is very well done. However, there is a problem that lies in a lot of Lana Del Rey songs. Not only on this album, but on a lot of her songs across all of her albums. There is about a minute of just instrumental breaks on a lot of her songs, especially a good amount of songs on this album that breach the 5-minute mark. They feature at least a good 30 seconds to a minute of just nothing but instrumental. And I understand why sometimes that might appeal to a listener, or why sometimes an artist decides to do that, but in this case, none of the instrumental breaks seem reasonable. None of them seem interesting. They elongate a song when it could be cut literally 30 seconds or a minute to make the track fairly better. Especially on the track Venice Bitch, where there's just like a minute or two of the instrumental that just makes me bored. But the ending of the track does seem to redeem it a little bit, but nevertheless, this isn't one of my favorites, but it's certainly better than the track Fuck It, I Love You, which was actually a single off of this album. I really did not care for the vocal performance of the chorus on this track. It just sounds like a bad Lana Del Rey impression. It seems like a mockery of indie, in my opinion. It just isn't in my taste. And sometimes Lana Del Rey also kind of gives these vocal offsets sometimes, where she just does, like on the song California, for example, she has this weird just vocal tone that doesn't align with what she's been doing this entire album. Certainly, I find the points where she is actually showing her true singing voice and her true vocal prowess, I find those appealing. I find those intriguing. I find them beautiful at most points of this album, especially mixed in with the piano ballads and a lot of soft rock instrumentation. All of it comes together very nicely on a good portion of the tracks, but sometimes you also get songs like Bartender that just doesn't really add up all that much. I don't like the chorus on Bartender at all. It's basically Lana Del Rey saying bartender, and then sometimes it's bar-tender, literally just repeating the t part in bartender. Like, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. It was a creative detour that seemed to go way downhill. Just no. I think the last track on this album, Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a Woman to Have, the last track off of this album is, I think, a good closing track to this album, but it also is very subtle, and that is also prominent in the title of the track, which is all lowercase. The structure of a song predicates the song title, if that makes sense. A lot of songs on here, for example, Fuck It, I Love You, Love Song, How to Disappear, The Greatest, they have a different style of typography, if that's the right word to use. Songs like The Next Best American Record and California, Cinnamon Girl, and Marino's Apartment Complex are normally titled, so it does beg the question, what is the intent of titling some songs differently than others? Is it to show that there's a different emotion to this song versus this song? At the end of the day, it doesn't change the song. It doesn't change the song at all. I would like to talk about the track Doin' Time, which is the Sublime cover that I talked about earlier in the review. I think this is a fantastic cover. I really enjoy the song, up there with Marino's Apartment Complex as being one of my favorite songs off of this album. I love the reverby sound that her vocals have, and I love the take on ska on this track. And it's like a refined version of a ska song. It's just more mellower, more toned down, a little hypnotic, and I really enjoy that. Overall on this album, I have to say, while there are great highlights on this album, I think there are a lot of lowlights as well. In my opinion, I wish Lana would stick to making shorter songs. I don't like when she breaches the 5-minute mark, because then that almost guarantees there's just this instrumental passage that I'm just going to yawn in between. Especially the track Venice Bitch, I think that's just a very long song. It could definitely be reduced down. It's an ambitious effort, especially on this entire album. It's a different take. It's an ambitious album. It's one of her best to date, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a number of shortcomings on this album, especially with some of the vocal performances, especially with some of the production choices, especially with some of the lyrics, which are at some points a little questionable, but mostly, like I said prior, they're mature, most of the time sexual. While I did enjoy a good chunk of this album, I think the fault lies in that Lana Del Rey, I think, over exceeds her talent in that she thinks she can do more than what she can actually do. I would like for her to make shorter songs, 4-minute songs. I would also like for her to make albums that are not as long or as arduous to sit through. This is an hour of material on here, 14 tracks. If that says anything, there are a good amount of songs that go over the 5-minute mark, and sometimes they just get very tedious. Overall, if I haven't said that already, I think this is Lana Del Rey's best work to date, but it's fractured at some points and flawed, but nevertheless, an interesting listen. But at the end of the day, I just feel that it could be refined more, and I definitely feel as if Lana can shorten her song lengths to make songs that are enjoyable, songs that are not hard to listen to or that you yawn midway through. So with that said and done, I'm giving this album a B- because it's her best, but I feel like she can do more with less. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this album down below. Let me know what albums you want me to review next, and that is it. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, share, do whatever you want. Lana Del Rey, Norman fucking Rockwell. Until next time.